Perpetrating sexual violence against women as a weapon of war. Israel brought that charge to the United Nations yesterday, accusing Hamas of war crimes.
Israel's ambassador also called out the UN for its deafening silence about these atrocities. Chris Mitchell has that story and the latest on the fighting in Gaza.
The IDF says its fight against Hamas is expanding.
As we expand our operation in Gaza, we remain committed to our goals: secure the release of our hostages and dismantle Hamas.
While condemning Hamas's strategy of using Gazans as human shields, the IDF says its goal is to help civilians get out of harm's way.
We are giving precise instructions to Gazan residents near Hamas centers of gravity, urging them to temporarily move away from the danger that Hamas puts them in.
The IDF continues to destroy hundreds of Hamas tunnels. The Wall Street Journal reports Israel is considering flooding the underground network with seawater, pumped from the Mediterranean to drive Hamas fighters out into the open. At the UN on Monday, the Israeli embassy sponsored a special session calling for condemnation of Hamas for using sexual violence against Israeli women on October 7th. Israeli Ambassador Gilad Erdan said there has been deafening silence from the UN, which waited too long, 8 weeks, to condemn the tactics.
We know this from eyewitnesses. We know this from combat paramedics. We would know this from some victims if more had been allowed to live. Maybe then one would be standing beside me right here to state something that should not need to be stated. Rape should never be used as an act of war.
Keynote speaker Sheryl Sandberg, the former COO of Facebook, condemned the use of sexual violence. Hamas said the accusations were unfounded lies to demonize Palestinian resistance.
The world has to decide who to believe. Do we believe the Hamas spokesperson who said that rape is forbidden, therefore it couldn't have possibly happened on October 7th? Or do we believe the women whose bodies tell us how they spent the last minutes of their lives? Who are we going to believe?
About a dozen Israeli women are still held hostage by Hamas. One U.S. official said the terror group might be unwilling to release them because they might talk about abuse they've experienced in captivity. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, joining us now from New York is Tal Heinrich, a spokesperson for the Israeli government. And so thanks for being with us. You spoke at the UN event yesterday. Tell us what you said. You said specifically Israeli women were murdered twice. What did you mean?
Thank you for having me on this morning. You see, I was the MC for the event. It was one of the most powerful events, I think maybe the most powerful that I ever witnessed at the United Nations. And in my opening remarks, I said that some of the women who were butchered on October 7th, and there are more than 300 female victims of this massacre, were murdered twice. The first time was when Hamas terrorists raped them and committed acts of sexual violence against them, mutilated them. And the second time was when Hamas terrorists put a bullet in them. Now, in at least one case, as I said, this happened simultaneously, which is absolutely sickening. But here's what I also said, that we will not allow for a third time to take place, that these women will not be murdered for a third time by silence, by neglect. And we saw that over the past 8 weeks. For that reason, we held this event to bring awareness to what had transpired, what happened, so that these women who cannot speak, but the other women, the other people who witnessed what happened to them are able to give testimony to that, and they need to be heard.
Why is there, I guess, a double standard? Here we have eyewitness testimony that women were being raped. We have eyewitness testimony that one of them literally cried out, "Kill me." It was so brutal that she was being raped, then she was mutilated, and then finally she was shot. So you have eyewitness testimony to that, and at the same time, there seems to be this conflicting narrative that, no, that could have never happened. Why are we seeing that?
It's a very good question. I think it's a combination of a few things, but the bottom line is, I don't know if you saw this hashtag, Me Too, unless you're a Jew. I think it says it all. Because it's really baffling to see how, some of these women's rights organizations have been telling us all along, believe all women, right? And now they're silent. They're simply silent. So one aspect is the fact that they're Israelis. One aspect is that they're Jews. Another aspect is that some of these, women's rights advocates and UN bodies maybe think that if they condemn Hamas for their atrocities against women, it means that they fully agree with the Israeli standpoint on the conflict. Again, I don't know. But as Ambassador Gilad Erdan, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, said yesterday, their silence is deafening. It's hypocrisy. It's pure hypocrisy.
Well, let's talk about the UN. There's a group called UN Women that is calling for itself a global champion for women. What's been their response to the crimes of October 7th?
Well, UN Women and also the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, yes, they put out a statement. But when did they put it out? After a few days, in the days leading up to the event that we held yesterday, the Israeli mission to the United Nations. Again, it's not that the UN organized that event. It took place at the United Nations headquarters in New York, but it had nothing to do with the UN. It was all Israel. So they put out their statements condemning Hamas, but also saying that these atrocities have to be investigated, and they did so right before we published the event, or right after, rather, we published the event, which is also, you see why it's wrong. They were silent for 7 weeks. Now, calling to investigate these testimonies and what transpired in terms of rape and mutilation and sexual violence against Israeli women, I didn't see them calling to investigate the numbers that the Hamas-controlled Gaza Health Ministry provided them. From the war so far. They only cast doubt when it comes to Israel.
Well, what would your message be to women on college campuses today in America? It just seems to be incredible that there are these current protests supporting the Palestinian cause. What's your message to them?
My message is, don't serve as apologists for Hamas. If you truly care about innocent people on both sides of the conflict, about Israeli lives and Palestinian lives, and if you truly want to stand for what is right, you should have moral clarity. And people should remember that all of what happened, all of the people who were killed, all of the people who were injured, all of the women who were raped over the past, 8 weeks since October 7th and until now, would have been safe today if it wasn't for Hamas's atrocities. That's what we need to remember, if it wasn't for Hamas.
Thank you. Thank you for standing strong. Thank you for standing for moral clarity. We really absolutely need it today, and be assured we stand with you and we stand with Israel, and we absolutely stand against rape as some kind of weapon of war. It seems the record's quite clear. The Hamas fighters were schooled to do that, and that they need to be held accountable. That is an absolute crime. It should never happen in today's world. Thank you for being with us.
You are correct. Thank you, Gordon.
For everyone at home, please remember the video that Hamas released. You don't need any more evidence than the women being paraded in Gaza, the ones who were captured. They were bleeding, and they were bleeding because they were violently and brutally raped. Don't ever forget that. When you hear this competing narrative that's currently coming, that this could have never happened, it was never there, it's their own video that convicts them of this crime.